So this is Acts chapter 24, and we're going to read from verse 1 through to 23. And Paul has come down to Caesarea. He's been accompanied by 470 soldiers, 70 on horseback. He's come to Caesarea, and he's come to Felix, who is the governor in Caesarea, to be heard by him. But he says, I'm just going to wait until the people from Jerusalem come down to make their accusations against him. So, Paul being in Caesarea, it says, after 5 days, the high priest Ananias came down with some elders and an attorney named Tertullus. And they brought charges to the governor against Paul. We can only assume that these were the people who hadn't said, we're not going to eat or drink until we slay Paul. We don't know what actually happened to them. Okay, perhaps they just decided that they perhaps would have a snack after all. But we don't actually know what happened to them. Paul is still alive 5 days later after these people said we're not going to eat anything or drink anything until Paul is slain. But he's still alive, still preaching the gospel. And after Paul had been summoned, Tertullus began to accuse him, saying to the governor. So they got the big guns out. Tertullus, the attorney, speaking for Ananias, the high priest. And he says, since we have through you attained much peace, since by your providence reforms are being carried out for this nation. This is him speaking to Felix. We acknowledge this in every way and everywhere, most excellent Felix, with all thankfulness. But that I may not weary you any further, I beg you to grant us, by your kindness, a brief hearing. For we have found this man a real pest, and a fellow who stirs up dissensions among all the Jews throughout the world, and a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes. And he even tried to desecrate the temple, and then we arrested him. We wanted to judge him according to our own law, but Lysias, the commander, came along, and with much violence took him out of our hands, ordering his accusers to come before you. By examining him yourself concerning all these matters, you will be able to ascertain the things of which we accuse him. The Jews also joined in the attack, asserting that these things were so. When the governor had nodded for him to speak, Paul responded, knowing that for many years you have been a judge to this nation, I cheerfully make my defense. Since you can take note of the fact that no more than 12 days ago I went up to Jerusalem to worship. Neither in the temple, nor in the synagogue, nor in the city itself did they find me carrying on a discussion with anyone or causing a riot. Nor can they prove to you the charges of which they now accuse me. But this I admit to you, that according to the way which they call a sect, I do serve the God of our fathers, believing everything that is in accordance with the law and that is written in the prophets, having a hope in God, which these men cherish themselves, that there shall certainly be a resurrection of both the righteous and the wicked. In view of this, I also do my best to maintain always a blameless conscience, both before God and before men. Now, after several years, I came to bring alms to my nation and to present offerings, in which they found me occupied in the temple, having been purified without any crowd or uproar. But there were some Jews from Asia who ought to have been present before you and to make an accusation if they should have anything against me. Or else let these men themselves tell what misdeed they found when I stood before the council, other than for this one statement which I shouted out while standing among them. For the resurrection of the dead, I am on trial before you today. But Felix, having a more exact knowledge about the way, put them off, saying, When Lysias, the commander, comes down, I will decide your case. And then he gave orders to the centurion for him to be kept in custody and yet have some freedom, and not to prevent any of his friends from ministering to him. But some days later, Felix arrived with Drusilla, his wife, who was a Jewess, and sent for Paul and heard him speak about faith in Christ Jesus. And as he was discussing righteousness, self-control, and the judgment to come, Felix became frightened and said, "Go away for the present, and when I find time I will summon you." At the same time, too, he was hoping that money would be given to him by Paul, and therefore he also used to send him quite often and converse with him. But after 2 years had passed, Felix was succeeded by Procus Festus, and wishing to do the Jews a favour, Felix left Paul imprisoned. So here we have chapter 24. This is what Paul is saying to those people who have accused him. And Paul is left for 2 years in Caesarea, imprisoned.